Okay, so David will be talking to you about site selection and preparation. And go for it, David.
All right. As Dr. Garcia mentioned, I'm one of her technicians here at the University of Arkansas. Kind of give you a little bit of my background. I'm going to tell you all up front. Most of my education is in animal science. I'm actually a poultry nutritionist or poultry nutrition researcher by trade. I've never had a horticulture class. But on the bright side of that, I've been gardening since I was a little kid and just kind of kept expanding. And I'm usually pretty good at observing details, so I may not know exactly what's going on with plants. And also have to say that my presentation may be a letdown after Dr. Lowe. Because I don't know all the specifics on the biochemical level on things, but generally I'm really good at seeing something and then I go find the person that knows what's going on. But anyway, having said that, I'm going to be hitting several different topics. They're more or less related. One thing, site selection, a little bit about soil nutrition, and going to kind of center all this around cover cropping. And I'm going to talk about a little bit at the end about give you some tips if you're doing raised beds with plastic mulch and drip irrigation. Kind of give you some basic tips that might help you out if you're using bedding equipment. Get into it here. The general things about site selection for strawberries is type of soil and soil structure is very important. You want to keep in mind rotation schedules and what has been planted in an area. Especially rotation, as you know, is a good agriculture practice, but it's almost an essential part of management in organic systems, if that's what you're looking at. Talk a little bit more about some biofumigation of the soil. Also, one of the important things we need to talk about and think about in site selection is water drainage and air drainage. A lot of people, water drainage is pretty intuitive. Air drainage, you got to think about a little bit, but it's extremely important to strawberry production. Know the cropping history of the site that you're using, especially if it's a site that, say it's a working farm that you've come into. You want to know what's been going on there in the past. Whatever site there, if it's an open field and you're starting from scratch, know what vegetation is already there. That's very important from the standpoint of removing that vegetation so it doesn't compete against your strawberry crop, but also could that vegetation harbor some pests and diseases. Strawberries take a lot of water, and even if you're drip irrigating and conserving water, maximizing the efficiency of the irrigation water, you're going to have quite a bit. Also, if you plan to frost protect with sprinklers, you're even going to have more water.
David, can you speak a little bit louder? You're competing with the coffee maker.
Oh, okay. Again, one of the most important things you got to think about too in strawberry production is markets and the price per pound that you can receive for your strawberries. I mean, you got to run the economics on it. If you're way out in the middle of Newton County up on a mountaintop and you decide you're going to plant 5 acres and you pick and want to get $3 a pound for them, that's probably going to be a problem. You may think about lowering your price and doing some wholesale, or picking and going in and setting up at a farmer's market or on a street corner in Harrison or Fayetteville or someplace that you get in at. Again, consider your water, also the equipment, the accessibility of equipment. Because say you're on top of a mountaintop and you gotta use mountain climbing gear to get up to it, you're probably not going to get a tractor and heavy equipment and other things up there. And also, you know, in the wintertime, people don't think about it. Can you access this area in the wintertime? It's like, well, the plants are dormant. Yes, they are. But if it warms up and you've got row covers on, you need to get in there and pull them row covers off. And if it's getting ready to Arctic clippers coming through and you got them uncovered, it's going to turn 5 below zero like it did several times this winter. You're going to have to access that place and get your covers back on. When it comes to soil, generally strawberries do well in a light sandy soil with high organic matter. Again, water and air drainage. One of the main things with strawberries is avoid wet, swampy areas with clay soil. That's the absolute worst thing you can do. This is not rice, and they don't tolerate wet feet like most of our horticulture crops. And a lot of these things that I'm telling you, it's one of them things that do as I say, don't do as I do, because these are kind of the ideals. And we know, especially in North Arkansas, we have very few ideals in any of our growing situations. You know, we got generally pretty heavy soil, and most of us have a lot of rocks. Which leads me to rocky ground provides very good drainage for the strawberries. But if you're doing plasticulture berries, it's going to be pretty hard. It's going to be a lot harder to form a bed is going to absorb enough heat units to grow that crop if you plant them in the fall. It can be done. I do it every year. Again, sites that have elevation and slope, water drainage, and air drainage. And where the air drainage really comes into play is in spring, early spring, especially whenever you have your blooms out. And 2.5 weeks ago, it dropped to, 23 degrees, 28 degrees, somewhere in that range, depending where you were at. A lot of the strawberry fields were starting to bloom. For instance, in my field, it's on a hillside. I've got a lot of drainage going down into the valley. I think it got to 24, 25 degrees in my place. With row covers, I still lost 5 blooms per plant. The temperature, if it would have been down in that creek bottom, the temperature would probably been lower, a couple degrees lower than that. So keep in mind your air drainage along with your water drainage.
Is there any preference to slope, north slope or south slope?
You know, I haven't really thought of that too much. I prefer a south slope. And mine, I've got about a 5% slope, and I make my rows go across the hill. It's a south-facing slope. One thing I can say about that is what I've noticed over the years is that I can get more heat units to grow those plants, which means that I potentially can or may have to plant a little later than a lot of growers do in this area, because I don't want to get too much growth on those plants. But with the 5% slope in the fall and winter when the sun's going down, I'm still getting more direct sunlight hitting that area.
So your rows go east-west?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Once you get an earlier crop with the southern slope?
I think that I do a lot of times. Maybe not this year though.
I mean, I've heard like something with peaches, you put them on a north slope, and that would delay
their
blooming, so that if there's a late frost, you're less likely to get hit.
Yeah, and I mean I think that's very important, especially in tree fruit.
Yeah.
It's important for strawberries too. The beauty of strawberries is that it's low to the ground, and there's ways to protect those blooms. But one thing that I always try to do though is manage the row covers. I manage the row covers to buffer the temperature, the cold extremes of the winter on those plants. In the spring, though, as soon as I can, though, I'm removing those covers because I don't want to advance the growth on them plants. Everyone wants to get early, seller wants to get early produce. I want to push my bloom back as far as I can, and because I don't want to, if I can miss one frost and not lose that 5 blooms, that's a good thing for me. Because think about it like this, and if you can say you lose 1 bloom per plant that's going to actually turn into a strawberry, and you've got an acre of strawberries, that's 16,000, depends on what your density is, that's 16,000 strawberries. That one bloom could be several hundred, actually probably several, maybe thousands of dollars. You can figure it out. But anyway, next thing you want to look at with your soil, and probably one of the most important things. One thing I can't emphasize more: commercial strawberries are extremely tedious. Very small movements in management. Small lacks in management, small improvement in management is going to affect your profitability, your production, quality, and profitability immensely. The tolerances of management have to be a lot tighter than with other crops. I would say, in my opinion, strawberries are 5 times more intense than tomatoes. And like I said, 1 bloom, on an acre, losing 1 bloom, that's 16,000 berries. The nutrition is probably the most important part. You got your field. As soon as you can, get a soil test of that field. And the main thing you're going to be looking at is pH. Remember that it takes months or years for you to shift that pH in the direction that you want it to. You may not have to, George. I thought you had a question.
No, yeah. We're not that contrary.
In most instances, it's going to take months or years to shift your pH. You can apply some things, like hydrated lime that can adjust it probably within about 4 weeks, but at the same time, that effect of that will not last very long. You'll probably have to lime it again within a year. Apply, if you need to, your lime and sulfur to adjust your pH well ahead of time. Also, nutrients, other than nitrogen, say some phosphorus and potassium, get those in the soil well ahead, months before planting if possible. Existing vegetation. Now, can you imagine going into a Bermuda grass field, or a Johnson grass field, and trying to establish a garden? It's pretty difficult, especially with weeds such as Bermuda grass and Johnson grass, and there are several others that are very hard to control, and they're very detrimental to your economic crops. You need to get on them as soon as possible. And if there's weed seeds present in the soil, maybe try to do things to get rid of those so they're not present or viable whenever you go to plant your strawberries. All these things I'd like to point out too, if you're an organic grower, all these things you have to be on top of, even more if you're a conventional grower and have the use of some herbicides and commercial fertilizers. again, the cropping history. Know what has been grown in this area in the past. If it's been cropped, know what the previous crop was and the crop, because a lot of the crop residue present can harbor diseases and insects. And things such as tomatoes, solanaceous crops will carry a lot of diseases that can transfer over to the strawberries. Find out which crops were grown, when those crops were last present, what was the rotation schedule in that field. And if it's not your field, you're unfamiliar with it, try to find out from somebody that's grown there before if there was any specific diseases or insect problems that they had. Remember that insects and diseases can build up over time, and that the presence of these can cause you problems years into the future. One of the main things that we deal with in strawberries is fungal root diseases, and a lot of these are going to be brought on by heavy wet soil, and a lot of times they're going to be present in the soil anyway, and it would be good to know that, such as Phytophthora, if you could talk to somebody, or if you know that you've had a problem with that in the past, it may change your management procedures somewhat. Major consideration, water. What's your water source? Is it a well, municipal source, a pond, a creek? Your water source is going to determine several different things. Considering your irrigation system, the most obvious thing is, depending on your water source and quality, is going to determine the type of equipment that you're going to need to deliver irrigation water to your strawberry field. Examples of this would be pump size, capacity, filtration, and hose sizes. One of the big things that's kind of coming down on on horticulture producers is called the Food Safety Modernization Act. I'm sure most of y'all are familiar with that. One of the things that's probably going to happen at some point is that most of us are going to have to be testing our water, mainly for pathogens, probably E. coli. It's going to be good to know what your water quality is in regard to pathogens and chemicals. And this is, right now, it's not mandatory for us, for most of us that are selling at, at farmers markets and locally. But it'd be good to assess this and know, and maybe even take action if there is a problem, just to protect you. One case of foodborne illness, if it's tied to you, I mean, you can just imagine the lawsuits and the ramifications of that. One of the things that the person needs to do in considering irrigation is determine, first thing is probably determine how much water you're going to need for that field, and then look at the minimum deliverable volume that you can bring to that field. I mean, if you're going to plant an acre of strawberries and you're needing 30 gallons per minute to irrigate it, and you're only going to deliver 5 gallons per minute to the field, there may be a problem there. You're going to have to probably do some serious zoning of and to get so you'll be able to water your field. It's probably going to determine basically the type of irrigation system and the engineering that you're going to have to do to make that work. So that's another consideration. food safety thing. Under the food safety guidelines, one of the major no-nos is animals. Be aware of animals in your area. Strawberries, as you know, are a very soft fruit. Bacteria can get on the fruit, and it's most time not cooked. It's eaten fresh, and along with some other products such as lettuce and spinach that are eaten fresh and that can harbor bacteria. The strawberries are very susceptible to contamination. Know what your animal situation is and try to control it. Any animals can be a source of contamination. Try to restrict pets and livestock away from your fields. Think about if you're going to feed some cattle or something. Okay, do you walk over to the cattle pen or out in the pasture and you step in manure and then you walk back in your strawberry field? I mean, you're transferring pathogens into the presence of your strawberry field. If you've got a feedlot situation or a barn with a corral with animals in it above your strawberry field, when you get 5 inches of rain, is that going to wash fecal material down into your strawberries? Keep that in mind. Wildlife is very difficult to control. Try to keep them out, not only from a food safety aspect, but also they're just going to destroy your crop if they get in there. Deer are probably the most vexing, especially in the fall. You plant your strawberries and they get up a little bit. Deer can come in, one deer can come in and wipe out a half acre of strawberries in one night when they're just starting to go. They generally like to bite the crowns out of them when they're that small. And once the crown gets bit out, your patch is gone. Those plants are gone. They're not going to produce. Consider exclusion, a lot of different things you can do, but really permanent fencing and good electric fencing is probably going to be your best bet for deer and other critters as well. Kind of switching gears here a little bit, or switching back. As we mentioned, strawberries really really do well with organic matter in the soil for several reasons. A lot of it to do with the conditioning of the soil and the aggregation of the soil, but also, of course, due to the nutrients that organic matter can provide to the plants. Organic matter will prevent the deterioration of your soil and increase aggregation. Organic matter provides food for the microorganisms in the soil. Through the decomposition process, the microorganisms are releasing nutrients that become available for your plants. And we're going to kind of get into that a little more when we're talking about cover cropping. This is a list of minimum pre-plant nutrients that you want to have in the soil, or it's a list that we do here. We try to adjust our soil before planting so that we have if possible, a pH of around 6 to 6.2. Now strawberries, the range is quite wide. They'll do pretty well from 5.7 up to 7 pH. But most of the commercial growers are going to try to dial in their pH at 6 to 6.2. Need 60 pounds of nitrogen and phosphorus per acre, 120 pounds of potassium. Calcium's kind of a moving target, but generally the recommendation is have at least 1,000 pounds per acre. 250 for manganese, 12 pounds per acre sulfur. On the micronutrients, probably one of the most important ones that we need to look at is boron. We would like to see, when you get a soil test back, at least a pound per acre boron, and that's not very much, but it doesn't take very much to for the plants. It doesn't take very much boron for plants and it doesn't take very much boron to create a toxicity. So boron is something that we need, and it can be applied and adjusted in the field, but it's in very, very, very small amounts. And one of the main things that boron does is increase the viability and germination of pollen, and which is going to hopefully increase the fertilization efficiency of the flowers. This is kind of an interesting chart here that Dr. Garcia likes to use in most of her presentations about soil, because it illustrates a very important thing. Again, find out what the pH is of your soil. If you don't adjust your pH to the range to fit the crop, you're wasting nutrients in the soil, and if you put any fertilizer or nutrients out, you're wasting those as well, and wasting money. Most of our crops are in the grow in the pH of around the 6 to 7 range, and there's a few that don't. Blueberries is one, but this line here represents the nutrient uptake as related to pH. Within this area here in the 6 to 7 range, if you look at maximum nutrient uptake on most of these nutrients, they occur within that area right there. Now, let's say that you have a soil that's pretty acidic, say it's down here in the 5s. First thing that's going to happen is your main nutrients, such as nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, the uptake is going to be diminished. It don't matter how much is there, the uptake is going to be diminished. The farther you go down the pH scale towards the acidic side, the less they become available. But when it comes to a lot of the micronutrient metals, such as down here, when you shift over in this 5 range, 5.5 pH, the uptake becomes more efficient for those metals. And a lot of times what you can do, even if they're not at toxic levels of the soil, the plant is going to absorb a higher amount of those, and they could be toxic to the plant. So keep in mind pH. Talking a lot about soil sampling, it's pretty basic. I know the county agent taught me this back when I was in high school. But the caveat is, keep in mind that strawberries have very specific nutrient requirements, and you're really wanting to pay attention to those. Again, soil sample, you may soil sample several times. The first one should be taken months before planting. Again, adjust the pH. When you're out in the field, you'll go through with a soil sampling probe and take several random samples across the whole field. Avoid areas with odd soil type. And the first thing the county agent, when I was a kid, told me when we were out sampling pasture was, he says, don't sample through a cow patty and don't sample over where they've been feeding hay, because it's going to skew your soil analysis. And generally what we do when we're soil sampling around fruit crops, say through blueberries, where you have a lot of mulch and organic matter, we'll go down and try to get through the organic matter and just actually sample the natural soil in that area. Take cores of the topsoil 6 to 7 inches, put them all together in a bucket, mix them up. If anyone doesn't know, soil sampling in Arkansas is free. Just deliver them to your county extension office. And something that I always try to ask for, because I'm curious, they usually don't do nitrogen or nitrate nitrogen on soil samples for most crops, but I always like to know what my nitrogen is, especially for strawberries. Even though nitrogen is a moving target, it may be there one time, it may not be the next, but I always like to see what's going on with the nitrogen. Picture of soil probe and bucket. After strawberries are planted, and usually for outside plantings in the annual plasticulture system, you're going to start sampling, doing foliar samples in early spring to determine the amount of nutrients that you're going to apply through the fertigation system. In Arkansas, we have a program here in Fayetteville, University of Arkansas, in which we analyze samples for strawberry growers, and they call it a kit, and you get 6 samples for $48 total, and they're going to give you almost a real-time turnaround on your samples, because you're going to be adjusting your fertilizer at least, or you're going to kind of want to know what's going on a weekly basis, if not several times a week. And generally the growers will take 6 samples over a maximum of 12 weeks. You may take more up front when the plants are rapidly growing, and then maybe save the last 2 after when the harvest starts to kind of verify what's going on. Once you get the analysis back, it's compared to known standards of where those plants should be in relation to certain nutrients. I'd like to point out that with strawberries, we analyze both the leaves and the stem. The only thing to analyze on the stem or the petiole is nitrate nitrogen. The nitrogen in the leaf gives you an idea of what the overall nitrogen status of the plant is. The nitrogen, nitrate, nitrogen, the petiole gives you an idea what the dynamic status, nitrogen status of the plant is, or how much nitrogen is being mobilized from the soil to the rest of the plant. And most of the time the petiole nitrogen is what they're looking at to help you determine what amount of nitrogen you need at a certain growth phase in the plant. And whenever you're sampling, you're actually sampling what's called the most recent mature trifoliate. And what that is, it's not an older, dark green, leathery looking leaf. It's a new leaf that has just come out and expanded. These are the ones you sample. And the reason this is done is because it's an actively growing leaf. You're going to determine what is being mobilized into the plant. It standardizes the sampling, so the standards that they're going to go by to determine your fertilizer level based on the analysis were done off leaves in this stage. So you need to pull leaves in that stage too, so the numbers will match up. When we go to the field, I can kind of show you too, what the leaves look like, and that you'd want to sample to send to the lab. This is a recent analysis report of some of the strawberries we have down here. Routine analysis is for leaf nitrogen, potassium, sulfur, and boron. We have calcium listed on here. They usually don't analyze for that, but we were wanting to look at calcium, so we requested they did. Then again, here's the petiole nitrate. The leaf nitrogen is measured in percent. The petiole nitrogen is measured in parts per million. Kind of talking a little bit about fertilizers. Have a lot of questions from people. Okay, what about conventional fertilizers versus organic fertilizers? The kind of nutrients are not necessarily different. The plant is going to absorb, it's going to use nutrients in a certain form. It doesn't really care where they come from. The main difference in organic, conventional fertilizers is rate of release. Generally, the organic fertilizers release nutrients much slower. And this can be very problematic in strawberries because, especially during the rapid growth phase in commercial strawberries in spring, you've got to be able to deliver those nutrients to those plants in a timely manner. So again, anyone interested in organic may need to do a lot of planning up front and do a lot of research and investigation to make sure that you have those nutrients available for those plants. Some sources of organic nitrogen here we've got listed are cottonseed meal, soybean meal, and several others. One thing we'd like to point out, one of the things, if you're going to feed nitrogen through the irrigation lines, through fertigation, one of the main things that's available is fish emulsion. I think there are some other things that can be put through the irrigation lines, but this is probably the one that's most available. I will say though, I've dealt with some folks that have used fish emulsion. I think we're using it at our Clarksville location. It will have a tendency over time to clog up your drip irrigation lines.